Good to hear from Gylfi Sigurdsson. And Gary, he started off by talking about Iceland's win over England in 2016. He was sort of trying to explain what it was that helped them get the edge over England, talked about the team spirit and the determination that they had. You were assistant coach of England at the time. So what do you think it came down to?
Do you know something, Kelly? Sometimes you can't really put it down to anything other than the fact that we knew about their long throw. Everybody knew about their long throw. We scored. We went 1-0 up. We started really well in the game the first 10 minutes and we were confident, went 1 in front, and then they scored from a throw-in within probably 2 or 3 minutes of us scoring. And we practiced, obviously, against how to defend their throw-ins. But once they scored that, we just completely lost control of the game, became completely deflated, couldn't change it either on the pitch or off the pitch. And it was as bad as, I had some bad experiences with England over a 20-odd year period. You remember Euro 2000 when we got knocked out by Romania in the last minute. I remember being knocked out by Argentina, but that was as bad as it will ever get, being knocked out by Iceland. It will live in the memory for a long time. And I just remember the stadium being absolutely dead. The England fans were dead. The team on the pitch were dead. We just couldn't do anything to lift them. And, you know, I think back to that game a lot in terms of sort of what happened during that match. The Icelandic atmosphere, the fans were outstanding. They had a really solid system. It was almost like when you think about, you played against that Wimbledon team maybe in the 80s in the Premier League where sometimes they'd go and shock you. It felt like you're playing against a spirit rather than really a really talented football team. They did have some talented football players, but they were more of a unit in terms of sort of how Burnley would now be in the Premier League up in sort of 10th position. You just sometimes think that the actual unit and the strength of the unit is outperforming the sum of the individual parts, and that's exactly what we got done. We just got absolutely done on the day, on the night. Couldn't do anything about it. Got played, lost concentration on a couple of big moments in the first half, and never recovered from it.
Yeah, and in contrast, as you say, Iceland felt as though nothing could go wrong for them. They were just riding that wave all the way through the European Championships. Jamie, he also talked about his and that he likes now out on the wide left central position. Where do you like to see him play?
So, sorry, Kelly, you broke up a little bit there. I didn't hear what you said at the start. Sorry.
Sigurdsson talking about playing out on the wide left.
Yeah, no, I prefer him in a central role. I think he's more instrumental. I really admire his technique. If you get him in central areas, I do think that some players will, even though they play on the left, I still think he's better on where he can come inside and hit those shots with his right foot because he's got unbelievable technique. He gets the ball dipping, swerving, moving really well. And I think if you say to him to go out and play in a wide left role and then go and chase fullbacks and go and do the work that he doesn't necessarily want to do, I think you lose a lot of what Gylfi Sigurdsson can bring to the team. I think players like him, although it's difficult, because he does do his job for the team, he will work hard. He's not necessarily one of those players that's the best defender in the world, but you've got to give him, to a certain extent, a free role so he can go work his magic, get his shots away, play people in, because he does see a pass not many can. But I think if you're asking him to play wide left and you're playing against a team with a fullback's raiding on, especially the way the modern game is now, you end up having to chase your fullback most of the time. And the last thing you want to do is chase someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold all game. You want to be playing where if he does go out of position, you can then go into the space that he's left and let someone else do that job. But I do like him. I think he's a very talented player. Didn't work out for him at Tottenham like it should have done. I think at Swansea he was a revelation. He was fantastic there. And at Everton he's shown glimpses. But he's a super talented player. And just sometimes I want to see more of his personality when he plays.
Yeah, he likes playing in that number 10 role, as he said, but maybe not always getting the opportunity to do that. Has he been hampered a bit, Gary, by the fact that there are other players who can do that at Everton? In fact, you could almost argue there's too many players who can do that at Everton.
I'm trying to think back. I think the last game I did of Everton was against United. I think they played Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin up front, and I think Ancelotti was going with a 4-4-2. And I was just thinking then when Jamie was speaking about the fact that when you have 4-4-2 and you play it in quite a sort of a rigid fashion, which I think Everton certainly did in that game that I watched against United, you obviously sometimes have to sacrifice your number 10 and this happened a lot during my career, mainly with England, where Scholes would end up on the left. But it even happened with United a few times, where sometimes Juan Sebastian Veron would play on the left because you had maybe Keane and Scholes, or you had Keane and Butt in midfield, and then you'd put Scholes to the left or Veron to the left. It does happen when you play 4-4-2. It's a system that doesn't allow for number 10s if you've got two centre forwards and you want to play with two strikers. And I think that's what had happened, that to fit into the actual team, he just got nudged over to that left-hand side a little bit. I think that's right, Jamie. I'm sure that's how Everton were playing just before the break.
You're right.
To be honest, it feels like that long ago.
I think if you're going to play in that position, I think you make a great point, Gary. If you're going to play as a 10 nowadays, you've got to be good. You've got to play every game. You've got to be involved. You can't flit in and out of the game. You've got to do the job when you haven't got the ball, because it is a specialised position, and it's a luxury, if you like. But I do think he does his job for the team. He's a goal threat as well. He can play people in. I just want to see a little bit more from him. Sometimes I feel that the game passes him by, which is a shame, because technically he's as good as anybody, because when you're thinking about 25 yards out, he cuts in and shoots. It's so hard to stop. I just want to see more of that personality.
Yeah, and I think that if you look at, say, the 4-3-3 system, and you look at, say, De Bruyne and David Silva, they've had to adapt to be more like central midfield players to fit into a system. And you think about how, say, for instance, Coutinho, when he was at Liverpool, he sometimes played in that left of the three in midfield. Players, I think that system does give you more of an option to be able to get players into sort of like those two forward midfield roles. I think when you play 4-4-2 with definitely two out-and-out strikers, you're either going to end up on the left or the right if you're a talented player. And that's where I think you've seen over many, many years. I remember when Juventus, sometimes Del Piero, who was a brilliant number 10, he would end up playing on the left-hand side to fit into their system. It does happen sometimes where you get shunted. Your most talented players get shunted into a wider area just to sort of make allowance for the system that you want to play.
Yeah,
it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Everton or when football resumes, and particularly if and when we get to the start of next season, because it feels as though they're on the brink of something with Carlo Ancelotti in charge.